Welcome to the Jaybe Show on Revolutionary Blackout Network. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this Sunday afternoon. Today is November 26, 2023. Good to see all of you here today. Come on in, sit on down, have a seat. We're going to have a conversation about a couple of things. It's going to be involving policing. So make sure to put on your hats because it's going to be an interesting ride. Just to let you guys know, the JB Show is every single Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys can find me on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays here on RBN as well. You can find me on my channel, on the JB Font channel, every single Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with subsequent readings throughout the week. Also, if you guys have not already, you guys can go to revolutionaryblackout.substack.com to get email notifications to get put on our mailing list so that you do not miss out on any clips or live streams. Also, a big shout out to all the patrons on Patreon. Thank you so very much to all of you who have contributed to the channel to make sure that independent media like this keeps running. Just to let you guys know, if you guys have not, we also do a fundraiser for our graphics designer, Erin. She also does our clips. If you guys would like to, you guys can donate at Venmo at Revolutionary Blackout or Cash App $mutual aid forever, because Erin loves the kitties, and thank you so very much for that. Also, just let you guys know that the Orlando chapter for Orlando RBN is actually doing a fundraiser. We're trying to raise $3,000 so that we can give away grocery gift cards, toiletries, and warm clothes to our homeless neighbors here in Orlando. From what it looked like and from what I was told from Savvy Savs, the action that she did about a week ago was a smashing success. I want to make the one here in Orlando a smashing success, and it involves you helping out. So if you guys would like to, then you guys can also contribute to there, and you guys can go to via Cash App. You guys can go to Orlando RBN, just making sure that that is also put into the chat as well. So thank you so very much to everyone who has contributed so far. Now, just to give a big hello and shout out to everybody that's watching on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Rockfin, and Rumble. Hello to all. Good to see you. Marco Padilla says, good morning, y'all. Good to see you, Marco. Bad Cookies coming in. Good to see you. Says, good morning, sworn enemy to Marco Padilla. I hope you're doing well today. Frenemies, baby. I love to see it. Matt John says, hey, Rad fam. Good to see you, Matt John. Mad Rad Matt. Like the way I put that there. Good to see you also in here as well. So all the people that are also watching on Rockfin and Rumble, good to see you. Now we're going to get into what are we talking about today. We got a couple subjects that we're going to talk about today. It's going to be pretty serious, but it's going to be necessary. The first one we're going to be talking about is grandfather murdered. We're going to be talking about a gentleman that was recently murdered. Unfortunately, we have to talk about these subjects, especially what happens to a lot of us Black people here in the United States. It happens over and over and over. And so this, of course, has to be kept in our minds to realize how disenfranchised we really are. So we're going to be talking about that. And also we're going to talk about a murderer that's in danger. Derek Chauvin is in danger. So we're going to be talking about that story. Of course, some of you have probably already heard about it within the recent couple of days, but we're going to be going deeper dive into that. And so here we go. So there was a gentleman that was murdered. He's a grandfather, also a deacon in the church. And unfortunately, he was killed by police. His name was Johnny Hollman. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share his photo first so you guys can see who he is and what he looks like first before we continue. Unfortunately, when things like this happen, it is so disheartening. So this is Johnny Hollman. This is him when he was at church. Of course, like I said before, he was a deacon. And his life was snuffed out. And so there's going to be some people who have white supremacist proclivities that would come in and say, well, if he just complied, then he wouldn't have lost his life. If anybody comes in and says that, take that bullshit somewhere else, because he should still be alive. Now, this grandfather that was killed, let's take a look at the news article surrounding it, and then we'll actually get into the meat of this story. It says Atlanta police officer used taser on church deacon after he said he could not breathe. Where have we heard this before? Where someone who says they couldn't breathe, whether it was Eric Garner, whether it was George Floyd, and Johnny Hollman. So, of course, this is in Atlanta, where Cop City is currently being built against the wishes of these citizens there. It says an Atlanta police officer responding to a minor car crash deployed a taser on a church deacon who disregarded multiple commands to sign a traffic ticket, shocking the man after he was repeatedly said that he could not breathe. Police body camera video released Wednesday. Johnny Hollman Sr. became unresponsive during his arrest late on the night of August 10th and later died. An autopsy determined the 62-year-old's death was a homicide, with heart disease also a contributing factor, and his family has called on prosecutors to charge Officer Kieran Kimbrough with murder. An attorney for Kimbrough, who was fired, says the officer acted lawfully. The roughly hour-long video shows Kimbrough arriving at the scene of the crash and gathering information from Hollman and other driver and passenger before the confrontation. Relatives said Hollman was driving home from Bible study at his daughter's house and bringing dinner to his wife when he collided with another vehicle while turning across a busy street just west of downtown Atlanta. So the police say that Mr. Hollman violently and unlawfully resisted Officer Kimbrough's lawful orders to arrest him, all because he wouldn't sign the ticket. Last time I checked, and I heard this from a lawyer, I think, is signing the ticket doesn't matter. Like, if you were issued the ticket, it's already basically in the system that you received the ticket. So signing the ticket doesn't really matter anyway. Somebody who's aware or who is a lawyer or law enforcement, correct me if I'm wrong. But even still, not signing a ticket it should not warrant you being killed. And yet he was, for not signing the ticket. See, here's the funny part. Not funny part. Wrong use of words. Here's the interesting part about all this. When people say, well, they should have just complied, is that compliance, does that non-compliance deem the person to be killed when the non-compliance does not threaten the life or safety of the person, the people around, or the officer administering the arrest? Did that non-compliance of signing the ticket threaten the life of the officer or the people within the area? If your answer to that is no, and yet you still say he should have just complied, that tells me a lot about you and your character. Now, I can only show so much of this video because I do not want us to get a warning or strike for this, but I'm going to show the first few minutes and then I'll basically describe with you what happens afterwards. So thank you for Attorney Griggs. It says the 62-year-old grandfather and church deacon named Johnny Hollman lost his life in Atlanta police custody after a minor traffic accident. He declined to sign the ticket, believing he wasn't at fault. And tragically, he was tased to death by an officer seconds later. Let's get into it.
So you
sign the ticket.
You trying to make
Sign
me
the ticket.
Something I'm not guilty of.
Sign the ticket.
That's what you're trying to make me say.
Sign the ticket.
Okay, I'm gonna sign the ticket. I'm gonna sign the ticket. I've been signing the ticket.
Sign the ticket.
Sign
the ticket.
How can I sign the ticket? You got now.
Because you're acting crazy.
I'm not doing nothing.
Give me your arm.
I'm right here.
Give me your arm.
I'm right here.
Give me your arm.
My body already hurt, man.
All right.
I'm already.
Another unit. Sign the That's on the ground.
I'm trying to sign it. What you doing like that?
Now, the moment when the officer escalated the situation, he said, Mr. Hollman acquiesced and said, I'll sign the ticket. But the officer kept going, right? He kept going and keep escalating the situation to the point where now he has Mr. Hollman on the ground. And as he's detaining him and has a hold of his hand, see, this is what police officers do. Sign the ticket. Sign the ticket. Sign the ticket. You can't sign if your hands are if you don't have your hands loose. Sign the ticket. Sign the ticket. It's wild. Because you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of Derek Chauvin with his knee on the neck of George Floyd and saying, and he has his hands in his pockets. He's like, well, if you can't breathe, then get up. This guy is holding the hand of Mr. Hollman and saying, sign the ticket, sign the ticket, when he knows that he can't. While you're grappling with him, he's an old man. And so what do you expect him to do? Go back a few seconds. Continue.
Ass on the ground.
I feel something. What you doing like this? I ain't doing nothing. I ain't doing nothing, sir. Why you hate me like this, man? I'm an old man. I'm an old man.
I'm not right away. Sign the ticket. I'm gonna change you. Put your arms behind your back now. Put your arms behind your back. Put your arms behind your back.
I am making up your back, sir.
Put your
I am making up your back, please. Let me help. Let me help.
turn around. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back.
I can't breathe.
Put your hands behind your back.
I can't breathe.
If I continue, then we'll get flagged. But as he continues to say he can't breathe, the officer tases again and again and again and again and again. And he keeps tasing, and he holds the taser, electrocuting this gentleman to death. That's torture. Johnny Hollman was tortured to death by police. And when we say defund the police, and when we say to abolish the police as we know it so that we can have a better public safety apparatus in this country, this is what we're talking about. Because even if he didn't sign the ticket, the officer has a copy, it gets submitted, and Johnny Hollman would still have to go to court and still have to pay the ticket. Everything's on camera, on body camera. And if Johnny Hollman wants to dispute it, he can dispute it. But instead of allowing Mr. Hollman to do that, this grandfather, like he was an active shooter, he treated him like somebody with a weapon. And I don't care the race of the cop. Because remember, black cops are cops first and black second. If it's a white cop, so when any cop sees this, they see you as a danger. Even if it's an old deacon from a church, even if it's somebody's grandfather, all because he would not sign the ticket. I didn't know. Maybe it's just me, but I didn't know that not signing a ticket threatened the lives of a police officer and the people around them. I didn't know that failure to sign a ticket would mean the ending of your life. Let me go over the details of what happened afterwards. The video also shows the aftermath of the struggle. Another first responder arrives and helps Kimbrough get the handcuffs off Hollman, who is lying face down and is no longer fighting. Kimbrough rolls him over, checks his pulse, and tells him to sit up, but Hollman is unresponsive, lying on the ground with a bloody face. When other officers arrive a couple minutes later, Kimbrough explains Hollman protested when instructed to sign a ticket, resisted when told to put his hands behind his back, and looked like he was going to hit the officer. Oh, geez Louise. Kimbrough said he punched Hollman a couple of times, stunned him, and put him in handcuffs. I don't know what's going on with him now, Kimbrough says. He's still breathing, though. The video release came after Atlanta Police Chief Darren Shirebaum fired Kimbrough on October 10th. Shirebaum said Kimbrough, who liked Hollman as black, violated department policy when he didn't wait until a supervisor arrived to arrest Hollman. LaRusso said Georgia law doesn't require an officer to seek approval for a supervisor before making an arrest, said Kimbrough has appealed his firing. Mawili Davis, attorney for the family, said at the news conference on Wednesday that Hollman was doing nothing wrong. What he was doing was making his case, like so many of us do when someone is going to issue us a ticket. He later added, instead of listening and being patient and using his training of de-escalation, instead, this officer treated him as if he were not an elder. So according to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, it has completed its inquiry into Hollman's death and handed over its investigative file to the Fulton County District Attorney, Fannie Willis, who decided whether to seek charges. The district attorney's office investigation is ongoing. It's not clear when that decision will be made. Now, this is from his daughter. It says she's grateful to Willis for releasing the video, but that's only the first step. She said, basically, the officer needs to be jailed. We need him prosecuted to the fullest extent of our father's life, because our father's life means so much, not just to us, but the people in the community. Mayor Dickens said to instruct the police department to do a top-to-bottom review of its standard operating procedures and training curriculum. Here's my question. Why does the police department have to do it? Why can't it be done by independent citizen investigators? Says that review led to some changes, notably a rule change that officers should write a refusal to sign on a traffic ticket instead of arresting someone who won't sign. Like, no shit, Sherlock. If they refuse to sign, they refuse to sign. Like, is it threatening the life of somebody? He went way overboard, and it resulted in the death of Mr. Hollman. And look, like I always say, when it comes to police, they exist for one reason and one reason only, and that is to protect the property of the people at the top, no matter what. Let's go here. because, of course, you guys know Nick is one of the co-founders of 10 Demands for Justice. And, of course, the number one demand is defund the police and reallocate resources to impacted communities, demilitarize the police, eliminate discriminatory policing. I think this also falls underneath what happened to Mr. Hollman. And you can say, oh, the police officer was black all you want. I don't care, because black police officers also discriminate against people of their own race, because that's what they're trained to do. That's the culture of policing. So, eliminate discriminatory policing, prosecution, and sentencing. We got to make sure we do that. Next, says institute complete law enforcement transparency and accountability. Independently investigate all police crimes and abuses of power. Police departments should not investigate themselves. And any changes that are made, any investigations that are made of policy, and any changes that are made must be administered by an outside force, not by within internal investigations. No, I don't believe in internal investigations when it comes to police departments. That's like asking an arsonist to investigate the building that he's burned down and to see the cause and who's guilty. Like, why would I hire a known thief who has constantly tried to rob me to help me investigate how I was robbed and who robbed me? Does that make sense to you? That's the problem with the system. The system always gives police, they give them this deference. They hold them up this high when in reality, they are the thugs. They're the killers. They're the ones that are killing people left and right. I would like to see whose DNA is in those 250,000 rape kits that are across this nation that have been unrevealed, that are sitting in police departments. How many of them have the DNA of law enforcement in those rape kits? Just a question. So yes, we got that. And there's many other demands that we need to go over. Not need to go over, but I would like for you to go over so that people like Mr. Hollman won't ever lose his life. And that means applying these 10 demands so that we can have a true public safety institution in this country, instead of one that is just capital safety for the rich. Justice for Johnny Hollman. Did you guys like the stream? Go ahead and give the stream a like really quick if you guys have not already. This pushes us out into the algorithm so that we are not as suppressed as usual. So thank you so very much. I'm going to be going to the chat right now. If you guys have not already, go ahead and share the stream as well. Let me go to Rockman first, and then I will go to the rest of the chat. Thank you for the chats. Hip car, he says, cops trying to get people to kill themselves every day. That says, recall Obama doubled the bounty on Assad Shakur's head. Today's modern day Harriet Tubman as M1 of Dead Prez says. Thank you. In fact, speaking of Assad Shakur, I just literally finished her autobiography the other day. So if you guys would like to listen in on that, you guys can go to my channel and go to the playlist for Assad Shakur's autobiography if you guys would like to. So thank you so very much for that, Himkar. Let me take a look at this link that you shared. Harassment techniques says surveillance, being followed, electronic surveillance, computer, phone hacking, monitoring profiles are built to identify all weakness and securities to be used. Information often obtained through sexual partners and trusted people in their lives. So yeah, this is interesting. Thank you so very much for this, Hemkar. But yeah. That's what they do. All right, so let's go to the rest of the chat. There's a friend in the chat. You got Heartlands Media. Kit's in the chat. Good to see you, Kit. Nice to have you. Welcome, welcome. All right, let's go. Good to see you, Dee. Miss you too, sis. Good to see you. All right, we got some friends and fam in the chat. All right. Also, Cam's in the chat. Hey, good to see you. All right, good to see you. Let me go here. Let me see. All right, so Bad Cookie says it should not be legally possible even for cops to force anyone to sign anything against their will. This should be illegal. I agree. I fully agree that you should not be forced to sign anything that you don't want to. Mike says, I was brutalized in broad daylight in 2018, and I wasn't even arrested or detained. Long story, but I had a neurological episode after a confrontation. The cops came and kicked my back, had surgery. I sued them and gave my deposition in 2020 that he violated my civil rights. Wasn't even arrested, detained, but the pigs asked me what was on my lip. It was dry skin. I was dehydrated. They tackled me, pulled me back off the asphalt, and one police officer came behind me and kicked my back. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry to hear that, man. Wow. Henstein said if he had complied, then people would say he must be guilty because he signed it. That's another point, Henstein. And thank you for bringing that out. Because if you're not guilty of something, you're basically not going to do it. And the only reason why he said at the end, he'll say, I'll sign, is because he was under duress to sign it. And so, like I said before, what does duress mean? It means being forced, coerced, being made to do something even though you don't want to. And the thing is that if he felt truly in his heart that he was not guilty, then therefore he has a right to dispute it. And so if he didn't want to sign, okay. The police officer is still going to submit his copy. And then the court would contact him and he can dispute it in court. But that's not what happened. The police officer felt threatened because a man wouldn't sign a piece of paper. Let's call it like it is. He killed him over not signing a piece of paper. Murder over not signing. Thank you so very much for that, Henstein. Great point. Graham Jones said cops are hired mercenaries. They don't care about human rights. And even in the United States Supreme Court says that they don't have the constitutional duty to protect you. To add to your point, Graham, they don't. Grape Teen says cops steal more money from the proletariat than criminals, according to the facts. Yes. It's called civil asset forfeiture. Thank you so much to Nick for teaching me about that. Jason said, Jaybe, the officer's ego felt threatened, so therefore brutal force was warranted. You know, a lot of these cops, and I hate to put it this way, because sometimes people who are conservative will say things like this, but it's true. A lot of them are a bunch of snowflakes. You say one wrong thing or look them in the wrong way, their feeties get hurt. And then they want to use their gun, their taser on you, their billy clubs and sticks, all because you hurt their feelings. And so then, guess what? The whole issue of free speech goes out of the window. They no longer believe in free speech because you hurt their feelings. And so they'll kill you for hurting their feelings. They'll hurt you, maim you for hurting their feelings. What? Katie says, I just know that poor man was terrible. R.I.P. Deacon Hollman. Matt John says, they're dangerous. I'm white, but I don't drive right now. It's dangerous, and I catastrophize. Cornelius says, taxes come from taxpayers, and officers could have mailed it to address, please. I mean, they could have just mailed it to him. They got his address and everything. They always, the standard operating procedure is always getting their driver's license, which has your address on it. I'll take a look at that in a minute. I'll go back to that. Thank you very much for that. I'll read that in a minute. Oh boy. Golden Monarch says cops are lapdogs for mainstream media, Wall Street, crypto industry, Amazon. They won't directly touch oligarchy corruption unless the oligarchs deem it necessary. Lock 7 says, I'm a Lyft driver. What are some good questions to ask cops when I give them rides? Oh, I don't know. But ask as many questions, incriminating questions as you can. When if they're drunk and they say, "Oh, I'm a cop," asking questions about some of their worst arrests, and then have your camera on inside the car. Maybe you'll get a confession out of them. Good to see you, Ellen Dubner. So thank you so much. Yes, gamer. Yeah, Sabby's not having a show today. She's still visiting New York. So Katie says, even if signing the ticket wasn't an admission of guilt, why couldn't the officer explain that he can tackle a 60-year-old man but can't speak? Meatheads. Speaking's not their forte. Now, before we move on to the next story, Chris H says, good news, everybody. Captain Ibrahim Traore is constructing Burkina Faso's first gold refinery. That's some interesting and good news. I'm going to have to look into that. Thank you for that, Chris. Remember, in Burkina Faso, they basically kicking out France. And it was Ibrahim Traore that led the coup against the Burkina Faso president, and is now taking it over and taking it and basically doing a decolonization throughout the nation. So if that is true, hey, and if they're taking that gold and distributing the money among all the people, good. As long as it's not for the personal benefit of him or anybody higher up in government, if it's for the entire populace, okay, good. I would like to see that. And using that money from the gold to be able to build up infrastructure. I would love to see that. Now, next story. Chauvin in danger, Will Robinson, danger. Oh. A story came out about what happened to Derek Chauvin. Baby, let's get into it. Derek is not having a good week. All right. Now, as many of you all know, Derek Chauvin was the officer that principally was the one that murdered George Floyd in 2020. He kneeled on his neck for almost 9 minutes, causing George Floyd to die on the scene. Of course, Derek Chauvin was arrested after a lot of protests. In fact, protests for the death and murder of George Floyd were worldwide, even happening in places like Gaza. There's a mural of George Floyd. Actually, there's a couple murals of George Floyd in Gaza, and I think in the West Bank, because of what happened to him. And this ignited a firestorm throughout the world about the police brutality that happens within the United States. Police brutality that really it happens not just at the hands of those of us who are less fortunate, less affluent, that are more poor, but particularly to a lot of us that are Black within this country. Because as many people know, or as many people have researched, police have actually started off as slave patrols in this country. So their primary directive has not really changed at all. So, of course, as goes with people in prison who have done heinous things, especially like Derek Chauvin, chickens come home to roost. So, let's take a look at the article. So it says ex-officer Derek Chauvin, convicted of George Floyd killing, was stabbed in prison. He was shanked. He got shanked. All right. So let's get into it. Says Derek Chauvin, former Minneapolis police officer convicted of murdering George Floyd, was stabbed by another inmate and seriously injured Friday at a federal prison in Arizona. A person familiar with the matter told the Associated Press. The attack happened at the Federal Correctional Institution in Tucson, a medium security prison that has been plagued by security lapses and staffing shortages. The prison was not authorized to publicly discuss details of the attack and spoke to the AP on the condition of anonymity. The Bureau of Prisons confirmed that an incarcerated person was assaulted at FCI Tucson at around 12:30 p.m. local time on Friday. In a statement, the state agency said responding employees contained the incident and performed life-saving measures before the inmate, who it did not name, was taken to a hospital for further treatment and evaluation. Says no employees were injured and the FBI was notified, the Bureau of Prisons said. Visiting at the facility, which is about 380 inmates, has been suspended. Messages seeking comment were left with Chauvin's lawyer and the FBI. Chauvin's stabbing was the second high-profile attack on a federal prisoner in the last 5 months. In July, disgraced sport doctor Larry Nassar was stabbed by a fellow inmate at a federal penitentiary in Florida. So it says Chauvin, who was 47, was sent to FCI Tucson from a maximum security Minnesota state prison in August 2022 to simultaneously serve a 21-year federal sentence for violating Floyd's civil rights and a 22.5-year state sentence for second-degree murder. Now, says Chauvin's lawyer had advocated for him keeping him out of the general population and away from other inmates, anticipating he'd be a target. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Of course he'd be a target. He's a cop. And he killed a black man. Black people are 13% of the population, yet we make up almost 50% of all the prison population. By the way, Black people in the United States also have the highest exoneration rates out of any group in the nation. Highest exoneration rates. Go ahead, look it up. Google it. If that tells you anything you need to know. So, of course, there was a lot of bad blood. Gosh. There was no pun intended, by the way. It says last week the U.S. Supreme Court rejected Chauvin's appeal for his murder conviction. Separately, Chauvin is making a long shot bid to overturn his federal guilty plea, claiming new evidence shows he didn't cause Floyd's death. New evidence? New evidence, my ass. Floyd, who was black, died on May 25th, 2020, after Chauvin, who was white, pressed his knee on his neck for 9.5 minutes on the street outside of a convenience store where Floyd was suspected of trying to pass a counterfeit $20 bill. Bystanders video captured Floyd fading cries of "I can't breathe." Also, remember, just if we can jog you guys' memory as well, he was crying out for his mama too as he was dying, as the life was leaving his eyes. I will never forget that video because I watched it in its entirety. So that's what Derek Chauvin did. And by the way, Derek Chauvin was under no threat because George Floyd was laying face down on the pavement with handcuffs tied behind his back, with a knee on his neck and another knee on his back, and then two other police officers on either side. And he's halfway behind a car. And he's screaming, "I can't breathe." And right before he dies, he calls out for his dead mother. So, that's what Derek Chauvin did. And now Derek Chauvin is trying to appeal, saying, well, he didn't die from me having my knee on his neck, which is complete and utter BS. Now, it says Chauvin stabbing comes as the Federal Bureau of Prisons has faced increased scrutiny in recent years following wealthy financier Jeffrey Epstein's jail suicide in 2019. It's another example of the agency's inability to keep even its highest profile prisoners safe after Nassar stabbing and Unabomber Ted Kaczynski's suicide at the Federal Medical Center in June. An ongoing AP investigation has uncovered deep, previously unreported flaws within the Bureau of Prisons, the Justice Department's law enforcement agency, with more than 30,000 employees, 158,000 inmates, and an annual budget of $8 billion. AP reporting has revealed rampant sexual abuse and other criminal activity by staff. Any wonder why we talk about defunding the police as well as abolishing the prison system that we have? Because look at the prison system. Our complete apparatus of public safety is created by the capitalist class in order to keep us in line so that we can create and continue their extraction of wealth. They don't give a shit once you're in the penal system. Now, this is not me making a plea for Derek Chauvin. And I personally do not believe in the death penalty. Now, chickens came home to roost. I will say that. But this also is a condemnation on the prison system that we have in this country. And most people who are in prison do not need to be there. Because a lot of people who are locked up on non-violent drug charges. And it should not be that way. So, it is being ran basically to keep slavery in place. That's basically how the prisons are. And despite that, the people who were most affected by a racist police force, an occupying military force that we know as the police, well, one of their own was in prison, and the people who are the most disenfranchised and who were victimized by the police, well, they got a lick back, basically. How else do you want me to describe it? I know people who are formerly incarcerated, and I can go up to them and be like, hey, guess what happened to Derek Chauvin in prison? Oh, well, he got stabbed and almost died in prison. You know how many former inmates and formerly incarcerated people will go, So that's what happened with Derek Chauvin. Now, a lot of people are saying that, well, some people, especially some cop-loving conservatives, would say, well, Derek Chauvin shouldn't really be in prison because George Floyd didn't die because of the knee on the neck. He died because he had an overdose because they found drugs in his system. Let me see here. Let me share that. It says George Floyd autopsy report is not new, does not say that he died of an overdose. It says claim a new autopsy report for George Floyd has been released in 2023, revealing he died from a drug overdose, not from the actions of arresting Minneapolis police officers. AP's assessment, false. Social media users are sharing a page from the 20-page autopsy report that was publicly released by the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office in full on June 3rd of 2020. It has not been changed since. While the page says he has fentanyl and methamphetamine in his system and did not have, quote unquote, life-threatening injuries, the full report concludes Floyd died from cardiopulmonary arrest, not an overdose. Now, I'm going to share with you guys the report because this shows that Derek Chauvin legit killed George Floyd. All right. First page, Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office case title: Cardiopulmonary arrest complicating law enforcement subdual, restraint, and neck compression. So, final diagnosis: 46-year-old man who became unresponsible while being restrained by law enforcement officers. He received emergency medical care in the field and subsequently in the Hennepin Healthcare Emergency Department, but could not be resuscitated because he suffered a cardiopulmonary arrest. Now, anybody that knows medical terms, cardio meaning heart, pulmonary meaning lungs. So cardiopulmonary arrest, meaning heart stopped, lung stopped. Why? Because there was a knee on his neck compressing. So therefore, it wasn't because drugs were in his system. Drugs may have contributed to making it easier to kill him, but they weren't the cause of death. So when anybody that goes, oh, he died because he had drugs in his system, that is complete and utter bullshit. I have an analogy for you. You guys know I like my analogies. Saying that George Floyd died of a drug overdose with a knee on his neck is like saying that if someone was shot with a gun, like saying like if I was shot with a gun, but I also had the flu at the same time, you're going to say, oh, it was the flu that killed him, not the gunshot. See how ridiculous that is? This is victim blaming written all over again. And here's the crazy part. They're still trying to blame George Floyd for his own death. How is it? How in the world, if I got the flu, but you shoot me, but then I bleed to death from the flu, but then I'm also weakened from the flu, it wasn't the flu that killed me, it was you that shot me. So yeah, so what? He did have methamphetamines and other drugs in his system. He also had weed in the system. So what? That wasn't what killed him. What killed him was the knee on his neck for almost 9 minutes. Because if that knee hadn't been on his neck, would George Floyd still be walking around? I beg to say yes. So, Derek Chauvin killed him. So for anybody that wants to come in the chat, be like, oh no, he died because he had a drug overdose. No, he didn't. Because a lot of people are going to look at somebody like Johnny Hollman and say, well, he died because he had heart disease. No, he didn't. Because guess what? If that taser hadn't been used on him, then he wouldn't have died. See, when you're black and a victim, you're blamed for what was perpetuated against you. This happens over and over and over throughout this country. When you're the victim, you still get blamed for it. Hell, this happens with Palestinians. They get their land stolen and then they resist. Guess what? They're called the terrorists. Meanwhile, the police who are trained by the Israeli Defense Force are using these horrible, arcane tactics against Palestinians as well as all of us. And then when we die, we get blamed for our own deaths, even though they were the ones that killed us. So that's what we're dealing with. And so what happened to George Floyd was a heinous act of violence. And what happened to Derek Chauvin when a man sows this, he will also reap. What goes around comes around. That's all I'm going to say on it. Did you guys like the stream? Go ahead and give the stream a like. Thank you so very much for that. If you guys also would like, you guys can join our mailing list by going to Revolutionary Blackout Network. I'm sorry, revolutionaryblackout.substack.com. And if for any inquiries wanting to give us any news, you guys can go to info@redblacknetwork.com and join or look up our site at revolutionaryblackoutnetwork.com. Now, if you guys have not as well, we are doing fundraiser for our graphics designer, Aaron. You guys can go to Venmo at Revolutionary Blackout or Cash App $ Mutual Aid Forever. And we are raising money for the Orlando Mutual Aid. You guys can donate via Cash App at $Orlando RBN. We're raising $3,000 for grocery gift cards, toiletries, and warm clothes for our neighbors here in the city of Orlando. So if you guys have not, then you guys can donate there, and it's very much appreciated because guess what? People are suffering and we want to help out our neighbors. Mutual aid is the way to go. So thank you so very much to all of you for that. Now let's go to the chat. All right, so I'm going to start off with Rockfin again. Make sure I always get Rockfin first because I don't want to neglect it and forget it. Hemcar says, I love to eat tons of fruits and veggies, but the food here is weird tasting. People are able. I don't know what that has to do with this subject, but thank you very much for that, Hemcar. And let's go to the general chat. Teresa says he shouldn't have been doing that regardless how many drugs he had in the system. That would have hurt anyone. Are you talking about Derek Chauvin kneeling on the neck? Thank you very much. Tomas says they said it was drugs, COVID, or overweight, anything except excessive force. Yeah, because they want to protect police. Joe Anthony says, of course, they will say anything to deny the reality of fascistic cops. The drugs in his system were not at a level high enough to pose an immediate threat. The Sand Queen says, I can't imagine who had to watch George Floyd die knowing they couldn't do anything without being murdered themselves. Yep. Mastermind Hour says George died of a policing overdose. Yeah. Hmm. Jacqueline says, I'm not sure if I remember the statistics right, but I'm sure someone mentioned on a podcast that in 3 years, the U.S. cops had killed roughly 5,000 people. The court of public opinion says that was a shit way to end nice morals, Jay. What do you mean? What are you talking about? Joey Peltier says June 16, 2023, the Department of Justice report on the Minneapolis police shows a history of the Minneapolis Police Department targeting and hurting the indigenous BIPOC here in Minnesota. I suggest everyone take a moment and read that report. Thank you very much for that, Joey Peltier. Team Orca says, fair concept. When you look at black men, you look into the basic gun. Okay. Thank you very much. Amanda Brinkley says, how do we get who were raised with hate around the world to start living their lives with their minds and hearts, allowing way too much hate in them, and how not to raise children with hate also? Interesting. It comes partly with community and building community, I think. I think that's part of it. There is a lot of people who, like, for instance, a lot of white people who have racist proclivities are white people that just do not have that many black people in their lives or people of color in their lives. Well, black or brown people in their lives, I'll say. And not that black people are a monolith, but you carry those things with you because you are detached from people. It's just like asking an Israeli person how many Palestinian people that they have in their lives. And then on top of that, realizing the oppression that is going on and how people behave and act the way they do because of the oppression that they're enduring. And instead of making excuses for the oppression, you try to relieve that oppression so that they can do better and have better circumstances. V.S. Adams, this is a great question. Says, if it was a drug overdose, then why did Chauvin kneel on his neck instead of giving him Narcan? Thank you for the super chat. Dupe says, comply or die is a lie. If you lack the complexion for the protection, you are a target and nothing can protect you. Black Lives Matter, free Palestine. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Teresa said, some people are just mad that someone actually paid a price for being racist. Oh, ooh, bars, Teresa. It's true. Jovel says, yes, Jay, how does drugs or whatever BS they come up with justify what the F he did? Absolutely. It doesn't justify it, because they'll look for a justification to relieve themselves of the guilt of the system that they actually participate in and perpetuate. Because I hate to put it this way, but a lot of times when the system benefits you and you don't help fight against a system, even though you benefit from it, your apathy and complacency also help keep it in place. Because you're not doing anything to break it down. You're not doing anything to change the narrative. And so, you know how they say silence is violence? If you're not speaking out against what's happening to marginalized communities, if your conscience bothers you every single time you keep quiet, then the best thing to do is to start making noise, even if it's at the expense of your privilege. The problem is so many people, and particularly a lot of white people, will keep their mouth shut out of fear of being ostracized by other white people. And then it gets easier to keep your mouth shut as the years pass on. It becomes easier. And then, just like what a lot of Israelis do with Palestinians, you start to make up in your mind, well, drugs in his system, or if they would have complied, blah, blah, blah. And it's always constantly making excuses for atrocities that are committed against people. See? So this is why it's so important to speak out against injustice. And this isn't just limited to white people. Those of us who are cis men, right? Cisgender men, when we see things like misogyny happening, are we speaking up when it happens, even if there's not a woman around? If we're all straight and somebody says something homophobic, are we speaking up even though there's nobody that's queer around? If we're all able-bodied and somebody says something against people who are disabled, are we speaking up even though there's not a disabled person around? See, that's the thing. A lot of us don't speak up out of fear of being looked as bad by people who are in the wrong. And if that bothers your conscience, if that makes you want to leave from watching this stream, maybe, just maybe, you have to look deep within yourself and go, man, I really have something to work on. Because guess what? As the old saying goes, a hit dog will holler. And if your spirit, if your insides are hollering at you to click out of the way from this stream, from what Jaybe is saying, or click out from what this, or if that's really bothering you from hearing what I'm saying, maybe, just maybe, there's some changes you have to make within yourself. And make no mistake, I'm talking to myself too in this. That's what we have to do. Oh boy. Now, Team Worker says Black people, although a minority in this country, are a blessing to the settler class that killed off the indigenous population. Boy. So yes, I'm gonna head out because I got some things I had to do for my channel, but I didn't want to make this a super long stream. But I just want to thank you guys for tuning in and watching. Just to let you guys know, on my channel this Tuesday, I'll be having on Hillary Agro. She is an anthropologist as well as I would say an expert on drugs. So we're going to be talking to her on my channel. So if you guys would like, you guys can go to my channel. It's in the description below. So you guys can tune into that this Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Of course, I finished the reading of Assata Shakur's autobiography on my channel. So if you guys have not, you guys can go there. I read the entire book. So I am so excited. I'm so excited. And so you guys can listen in on that and the playlist on that on my channel. Also, if you guys have not already, you guys can donate to the Orlando Mutual Aid chapter so that we can give the people who are homeless in our area in Orlando some relief because, well, they are suffering. So I'm just looking in here to see if there's any donations so that I can give them shouts out live on stream, because I like to do that. All right, so something pending, so we shall see. But Amanda says, I ruin moods. Many white men and white men parties not laughing at racist jokes and actually making a little fuss about it. We've got to encourage white people to educate better and do better in private circles. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much for that. Tracy Jones says, in case you have not been told today, JB, you are an thank you. You are an inspiration to people that you do not even know. Maybe shall never meet. I look at your pinned tweet each. Oh, thank you. Wow, that is too sweet. Thank you so very much. I'm telling you, man, the community that we have here are full of some of the most compassionate, kind people. I want you guys to continue to just keep being you and keep being the best version of yourself every single day, because that's who you are, man. And the fact that you guys actually want to change the system, not just for yourself, but for everybody, that says a lot about you. It says so much about you. It's the fact that you guys also have empathy for the people who you don't even know. Oh my gosh. History will look so kindly upon you for being who you are. Just continue to remember that, right? Keep being the best version of who you are. So I'm thinking about doing a stream on my channel because there's some things I want to talk about. I'll keep you guys up to date. Keep an eye on my channel. But yes, and by the way, like I always tell everybody, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Look, smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then look, laugh, watch something funny, because joy is revolutionary. Look, free Congo, free Sudan, free Haiti, free Palestine, free Puerto Rico, end the blockade on Cuba, free Samoa, free Hawaii, free them all, baby, because that's what we need to do. And yes, hit the like on your way out. Do what Bad Cookie says. Bad Cookies is really a good cookie, but they don't want you to know they're a good cookie because they got a reputation to uphold. You know what I'm saying? Oh my goodness. Somebody stop me. Okay. Anywho, also justice for Johnny Hollman. Please make sure to spread the word about what's going on with him. Thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in. Love you guys, and be safe out there. And if you guys are going to any protests in the genocide in Gaza, please make sure to stay safe out there. Avoid the police if at all possible. Try to keep yourselves and the people around you safe, and show solidarity and love with everybody, including the anti-Zionist Jewish people out there. Let them know that they are loved, because some people are going to be using what's going on in Palestine and in Gaza as an excuse to be actually anti-Semitic. Do not let them do that. Shut down real anti-Semitism. Show your love to the anti-Zionist Jewish folks out there who are showing what real Judaism looks like, okay? And give them a hug for me, will you? If consensually, all right? Give the Palestinian people a hug, and give the anti-Zionist Jewish people a hug for me too. And I'm going to give you forehead kisses, because that's just the kind of dude I am. Bye!